The first sign was not movement, but stillness. At the edge of the floodplain, where the rain-swollen waters had softened the earth, a foal lay half-sunken into a patch of quicksand. Its narrow chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm, each breath a struggle against the weight that pressed down. The ground, slick with silt, clung to its slender legs. Every twitch, every effort to rise only drew it deeper. Nearby, the mare stood, her body taut with tension. Ears pinned forward, nostrils flaring, she remained rooted to the same spot, refusing to leave. Her coat, darkened by rain, shivered with unease as she shifted her weight from hoof to hoof. She lowered her head once, letting out a soft nicker, a sound of reassurance, though her eyes carried the restless fire of fear. The quicksand held the foal in silence, broken only by the soft, sucking sounds of mud as it shifted beneath his weight. His small hooves pressed feebly, trying to find ground where none remained. The effort left him exhausted, sides heaving, head falling back into the muck. He blinked slowly, lashes caked with wet earth, as though sleep might pull him under. The mare edged closer, her muscles quivering as if to step in, but instinct kept her still. She circled instead, pacing a half-moon around her young, her tail lashing in agitation. Each pause was marked by a stamping hoof, sending small sprays of mud into the air. Her voice rose in another low call, urgent now, directed at the foal but also at the empty horizon, as if summoning help from beyond the plain. The landscape mirrored her isolation. The sky hung heavy, low with cloud, and the floodplain spread wide in shades of brown and gray. Pools of water stretched across the grass, broken only by reeds bending under the rain. It was a place where few creatures lingered, and the silence gave weight to the mare's vigil. Time slipped slowly. The foal tried once more to lift himself, gathering what strength he had left. His legs flailed, churning the mud, but the earth swallowed the effort with ease. He collapsed back into the mire, sides trembling. A weak cry escaped his throat, muffled almost instantly by the wet air. The mare's response was immediate. She thrust her muzzle forward, the sound of her breath sharp against the rain, and let out a stronger call. It was not frantic but resolute, a declaration that she would not abandon him. Her hooves struck the ground again, a dull thud on the softened soil. Her body arched with defiance against the pull of the mire. In moments like these, the wild reveals both its cruelty and its devotion. A foal too young, too light-boned, had wandered where the earth gave way, and a mother, bound not by choice but by nature, stood fast, her presence the only anchor against despair. The foal's eyes closed briefly, then opened again, heavy with exhaustion. His ears flicked at the sound of her calls, faint movements that showed he still heard, still clung to the thread of her nearness. The mare lowered her head until her muzzle brushed the wet ground, as close as she could reach without stepping into the trap herself. Her breath stirred the surface, sending small ripples through the mud, and the foal gave the faintest twitch in reply. The rain eased, softening into a mist, but the danger did not. The foal was caught fast, and the mare was bound by loyalty, unwilling to leave. Together they stood in fragile balance, one sinking, one refusing to turn away. In the stillness of the plain, where water met earth in a cruel snare, a quiet truth emerged. Survival here would not be a solitary fight. It would depend on patience, on endurance, and perhaps on the unseen hands of those who had yet to arrive. The mare did not know rescue was possible. She only knew her place was here, her shadow cast over the small, trembling body of her young. She would not move. Not until he did. The mare did not stray from her place. Rainwater dripped steadily from her mane, her flanks streaked with mud, but her focus never faltered. She circled the edge of the mire in measured arcs, hooves striking damp earth with the rhythm of her unease. Each turn brought her closer to the foal, but never far enough to risk the pull of the sinking ground. Her nostrils flared with every breath, drawing in the faint, sharp scent of fear that lingered in the air. The sound of her whinnies rose and fell, soft yet insistent, as if urging her young not to surrender to the weight of the mire. The foal's movements had slowed, his energy waning with each passing minute. His head rested heavily against the mud, eyelids trembling as he fought against exhaustion. At times, his ears flicked weakly at his mother's voice, but the rest of his body seemed to sink deeper into stillness. The mare reacted to every twitch, stamping the ground as though the sound alone could lend him strength. Her muscles rippled beneath her soaked coat, a body built for freedom and flight, now bound by the refusal to abandon what she could not lift. When the first figures appeared on the edge of the floodplain, the mare lifted her head sharply. Strangers stepped slowly from the tall, wet grasses, their boots sinking into the sodden earth. They carried ropes coiled against their shoulders, their movements deliberate, measured to cause no sudden alarm. The mare froze, her body a wall between her young and those who approached. The whites of her eyes showed as she tossed her head, a sharp exhale cutting through the mist. The rescuers stopped short, respecting her line. They waited, rain dripping from their jackets, watching the unbroken thread of loyalty stretched taut between mother and foal. One of them spoke in a low voice, words softened by distance. "Easy now. We're here." It was not meant for comprehension, but tone carried meaning. Calm, steady, unthreatening. The mare's ears flicked toward the sound, but quickly returned to the foal. Her hooves dug shallow grooves into the wet soil as she shifted her weight, torn between the instinct to guard and the helplessness of her vigil. She called again, a throaty sound that lingered in the damp air, her body trembling with urgency. The rescuers did not step forward. They stood in quiet patience, watching the mare, acknowledging that her decision mattered as much as theirs. Around them, the plain lay hushed beneath the passing rain. A heron lifted from the reeds in the distance, its wings beating slowly into the gray sky. Water pooled in uneven hollows, reflecting the pale light of afternoon. The mare's breath rose in visible bursts, her sides expanding with each labored exhale. The foal stirred faintly, a weak movement of his head that broke the spell of stillness. Mud clung thick to his muzzle as he lifted it briefly, then let it fall again with a soft, muffled sound. The mare stepped forward at once, her neck arched low, her breath brushing over the edge of the mire. Her body blocked the rescuer's view, shielding her young as though the simple act of presence could keep the sinking earth at bay. Minutes stretched into a quiet standoff, humans waiting, the mare holding her ground. Her eyes, dark and wide, did not waver from her foal. They glistened with the reflection of the water, unwavering beacons fixed on the fragile life before her. The rescuers exchanged a glance but did not move. They knew her stillness was not inaction. It was a choice, a declaration that she would not yield her place until trust was earned. And so, in that quiet circle of mud and rain, two forces met without conflict. The mare, resolute in her vigil, and the rescuers, patient in their understanding, bound together by a single truth. The foal's fragile breaths must not be the last. The rescuers waited until the mare's circling slowed, her hooves falling into softer, hesitant steps. Her sides heaved with the rhythm of her breath, her nostrils damp with mist. Only when her posture lowered slightly, less rigid than before, did one of them uncoil the rope from his shoulder. The sound of fibers brushing together was almost inaudible under the murmur of rain, yet the mare's ears flicked instantly toward it. She snorted, pawing at the ground, her eyes locking on the coil as though it were a living thing. No one rushed. The rope was placed carefully on the ground, its weight sinking slightly into the wet earth, then eased forward with a slow push of the hand. Every movement was deliberate, quiet, as though even the air around them might shatter the fragile calm. Step by step, the rescuer edged closer to the mire's edge, lowering himself to a crouch. He extended the rope, not as a tool of force, but as a lifeline, letting it rest just beyond the foal's reach. The foal stirred. His head, caked with mud, lifted weakly from the surface. His ears flicked once, then again, as if registering the faint shift in presence. His muzzle trembled with effort, nostrils flaring as he drew in shallow breaths. For a moment his gaze found the rope. Though it carried no meaning for him, only the foreign scent of humans, the salt of sweat, the faint trace of grass caught in its fibers. The mare stepped forward at once, hooves thudding against the sodden earth. She lowered her head sharply, her breath a sharp gust that sent droplets scattering from her wet muzzle. Her body trembled, poised between flight and defense, yet she did not bolt. Her neck arched protectively over the foal, eyes darting between the humans and her young. She snorted again, the sound raw, carrying the weight of fear and determination together. The rescuer did not retreat. His hand remained still, the rope lying slack, unmoving. In a low voice, barely above the rain, he whispered, "Easy, girl. Just easy." The words were not for understanding, but for tone. A soft thread of calm stretched between them. The mare's ears twitched at the sound, flicking back and forth. Her tail lashed once, but her hooves stilled. She remained where she was, close enough that her breath stirred the mud near the foal's head. The foal gave a faint, broken whimper, his small legs kicking once before sinking again into the mire. The sound tightened the silence around them. Another rescuer stepped closer, laying his hand gently on the ground, as if to show emptiness, no threat. Together they worked the rope forward inch by inch until it lay across the mire, its coarse strands brushing against the foal's side. The touch startled him, his head jerked, ears flicking back in alarm, but there was no strength behind the movement. He blinked slowly, eyes half closed, his sides rising and falling with labored breaths. The mare edged nearer, her body quivering with every shift of her weight. Mud clung to her fetlocks, yet she did not press into the mire. Her muzzle lowered, brushing faintly against the foal's neck. The soft contact drew a faint flick of his ears, a shiver of recognition at her presence. She lingered there, her breath warm against his skin, even as the rope brushed against him again, this time with more intention. The rescuers waited, never pulling, never forcing. The rope rested where it lay, patient as the moment stretched. The mare's eyes met theirs only briefly, dark and glistening with the rain. There was no yielding in them, only the heavy silence of consideration. She stood trembling, caught between the sharp edge of fear and the quiet hope that something here might save her young. And so, beneath the weight of gray skies, trust was not taken, but asked for. A rope across the mire, a foal lifting his head in weary response, and a mother caught in the trembling stillness between resistance and faith. The rope was drawn taut with a slow, steady pull, the fibers creaking under the strain. Every movement was measured, never hurried, the rhythm of strength balanced with caution. Mud clung tightly, resisting the effort, sucking at the foal's small body with each shift. His legs kicked feebly, splattering dark water across the rescuer's boots, but his strength was nearly gone. The rope tightened again, lifting him inch by inch until the line of his shoulders broke free from the mire's hold. The mare's reaction was instant. She surged forward, nostrils flaring wide, hooves stamping into the softened ground. A harsh snort cut the air, and for a moment the rescuers froze, holding the rope steady. Her body hovered between fury and desperation, trembling with the need to close the distance. One rescuer lifted his hand slightly, palm open in quiet reassurance, the gesture wordless yet enough to keep her from charging closer. The foal's head lolled sideways, his eyes half-lidded, mud sliding in thick clumps down his neck. His chest rose with shallow, uneven breaths, each one dragging a faint whistle of air into his lungs. The rescuers pulled again, this time with a stronger heave, and his hindquarters lifted clear. The mire released him reluctantly, as though unwilling to surrender what it had taken. At last, his body rolled onto firmer ground, collapsing into a heap of trembling limbs and heavy breath. He lay still at first, the weight of exhaustion pinning him where he fell. Mud coated his coat in thick matted sheets, hiding the soft color beneath. Only the faint flick of an ear and the uneven rise of his chest showed that life still moved within him. The mare lowered her head at once, pressing her muzzle against his neck. Her breath came in short, urgent bursts, the sound raw with relief. She touched along his body, nudging gently at his shoulder until a faint twitch answered her. The rescuers stepped back in silence, leaving space for the bond they dared not disturb. Mud streaked their clothes, the rope now slack at their feet, but none moved to retrieve it. The moment belonged to the two who had endured it together. The mare stood so close, her damp flank brushed against the foal's side, her tail swishing anxiously as she shifted her weight from hoof to hoof. Her ears flicked constantly, attuned to every faint sound. Yet her focus never strayed from her young. One rescuer exhaled slowly, voice barely above a whisper. "You're almost there." The words dissolved into the quiet, carried away by the damp air. The foal stirred again. His legs shuffled against the ground, coated hooves scraping the earth weakly. His head lifted an inch, then dropped back down, the effort too heavy for his weary frame. The mare responded instantly, her muzzle nudging beneath his jaw, encouraging, insistent. He answered with another twitch, then a faint shake of his head that scattered droplets of mud across her face. She did not flinch. She pressed closer, drawing the warmth of her body around him like a shield. For long moments there was only the sound of breathing, the mare's heavy, steady rhythm and the foal's fragile, broken gasps. Rain pattered softly over them, gathering on their coats before slipping away in rivulets of brown and gray. Around them, the world remained hushed, as if the landscape itself held still to witness the fragile return. The rescuers stood in a loose circle, unmoving, watching the quiet reunion. They knew their part was finished. What remained belonged to time, to the slow strength of recovery, and to the bond that needed no words. The foal's ear flicked once more, and his breathing steadied just enough to match the rise and fall of his mother's flank. The mare lowered her head, resting her muzzle lightly against his side. It was not victory, not yet, but it was life, pulled free from the depths. The foal lay in the damp grass, his sides heaving, his body coated in mud that clung like a second skin. The effort of breathing alone seemed to press the last of his strength into the earth, but the mare would not let him rest too long. She hovered close, her head dropping again and again to nudge at his shoulder, her breath quick and insistent. Each touch was both comfort and command, a call to rise. The rescuers stood back, their boots sinking slightly into the softened ground, hands loose at their sides. They made no move to interfere. The struggle ahead was not theirs to shape. It belonged to the bond between the two animals, the steady persistence of a mother urging life forward, and the fragile determination of a foal who had nearly been lost. Slowly, the foal's front leg bent, pushing awkwardly against the earth. His hoof slipped once, skidding across the slick grass, and he sank back down with a soft grunt. The mare shifted her weight, circling just enough to press her shoulder against his side. Her flank trembled as she steadied herself, lending him her balance without force. Her tail flicked, her ears flicked forward, never straying from her young. Another attempt came, clumsy and halting. The foal's legs unfolded beneath him, too thin, too slick to hold steady. They shook as though they might break under their own weight. For a moment he swayed dangerously, leaning against the mare's body, eyes half shut with exhaustion. She did not move. She bore the weight without hesitation, her stance broad and unyielding. One rescuer whispered softly, "Easy now. You've got him." The words barely reached beyond his breath, but the silence was deep enough to carry them. The foal's legs shivered violently, then steadied in small increments, every heartbeat giving him a fraction more strength. His head lifted, ears twitching at the faint calls of distant birds. His chest rose with a fuller breath, and a soft sound escaped him, thin, uncertain, but alive. The mare answered with a low nicker, her muzzle pressing into his damp neck. When he finally stood alone, it was not graceful. His stance was wide, his body trembling as if the ground itself were unsteady beneath him. But he was upright, supported only by his own strength. The mare lingered at his side, watching him test each step, her movements matching his in slow synchronization. They shifted forward together, one unsteady step, then another, until the foal's gait found rhythm. The rescuers did not follow. They watched in stillness as the pair moved toward the open plain, the mare never breaking her vigil, never allowing distance to grow between them. The foal leaned close, his flank brushing hers, guided more by her presence than by his own balance. Step by step, they carried themselves out of the shadow of the mire and into the safety of wider ground. The air seemed to open with their passage. The heavy dampness of the floodplain gave way to a stretch of grassland where wind stirred gently through the tall reeds. The sun broke faintly through the clouds, laying a pale light across their backs, tracing their slow departure into the vastness of the plain. The rescuers remained where they stood, their silence unbroken. They had played their part, but the true weight of survival had always rested here, in the fragile, stubborn will of a foal and the unwavering watch of its mother. As distance grew, the shapes of the mare and foal grew smaller, yet still bound side by side, the foal's uncertain steps guarded by her steady presence. The sound of their movement faded, replaced by the whisper of wind through the grass. In the quiet they left behind, the rescuers carried only the memory of stillness broken, of a life pulled free, and of a mother who would not leave until her young could stand.